Harlequin Audio is proud to bring you No One But You, a Silver Springs novel by Brenda Novak, performed by Veronica Worthington. 1. The century-old farmhouse looked haunted. Sadie Harris wasn't particularly superstitious, but knowing 2 people had been murdered in an upstairs bedroom of this isolated white clapboard home didn't make her eager to work here. She parked outside the gate and sat in her car, engine off, angling her head to see through the passenger window. Dawson Reed, who'd placed the newspaper ad she'd responded to, was out of jail all right. A pickup truck that didn't appear to be in much better shape than the rattletrap Chevy El Camino her mother's brother left her when he died 3 months ago sat in the drive. Not only that, the 2x4s that had blocked the doors and windows of the house for the past 12 months had been pried away, some of the weeds had been trimmed in front, and the mailbox had been straightened and reinforced. But Dawson hadn't been home long enough to get around to everything that needed tending to. What with the vandalism that had occurred in his absence, and the deferred maintenance that went along with having a house sit empty for so long, he had his work cut out for him. She wondered what he had to be thinking, now that he'd returned to Silver Springs. After a year spent fighting for his freedom, he'd narrowly escaped a verdict that would have landed him on death row. But he couldn't be too excited to rejoin this small community. Regardless of what the jury said, he was guilty in the minds of all those who lived around here. Sadie frowned as her eyes traced the graffiti that was still on the house. Someone had spray-painted the word murderer on the wood siding above the porch, in letters large enough to be read from the highway a quarter-mile away. That Dawson hadn't scrubbed it off first thing said something about him, didn't it? But what? Was he too beleaguered after his long ordeal to care what folks thought? Too busy with items he felt should be handled first? Or was leaving it there his way of flipping off the many concerned citizens of Silver Springs? He could be taunting his detractors because he'd wound up inheriting the property despite what they thought. The alarm she'd set on her phone sounded, startling her so much she whacked her hand on the steering wheel. "Ow!" she complained as she grabbed her cell and turned off the noise. If she planned to be on time for this interview, she had only 3 minutes to walk the length of the dirt drive leading to the front door. And yet she wasn't completely convinced she should keep the appointment, couldn't even say what kind of job it would be. Although Dawson had advertised for a housekeeper/caregiver, he lived alone. Why couldn't he take care of himself? Not many healthy adults had a housekeeper in Silver Springs. That sort of freaked her out right there, before she even got to the fact that it was dangerous to meet a man out here, alone, who might have hacked his adoptive parents to death with a hatchet. She shuddered at the bloody image that crept into her mind. The gruesome details of the Reed killings had been reported in the papers and on the evening news with great regularity. Any murder in these parts would be shocking. L.A. was only 90 minutes to the south. Such a crime wouldn't be so unheard of there, but this was a peaceful artist and farming community with mission-style adobe buildings and beautiful murals. The worst thing that had ever happened before the Reed murders, at least in recent memory, was when the Mueller girl ran away and was kidnapped. Even that was 20 years ago, and she went to Hollywood, so she was kidnapped there. Pressing the button that would bring up her display, Sadie checked the time on her phone. The clock in the car was broken, along with everything else that didn't directly contribute to the drivability of the vehicle. 2 minutes. Dared she go? Or should she take off while she still could? Sly, her domineering, soon-to-be ex-husband, would warn her to keep her distance from Dawson. He'd already put in his 2 cents. They'd argued about it for over an hour last night. "You don't want to work for that bastard. What kind of guy kills 2 old people in their sleep? The couple who took him in when no one else would, fed him, clothed him, treated him as their biological child. They were so proud of him, and you wouldn't believe what he did to those people. Talk about the ultimate betrayal." When Sadie had pointed out that no one knew for sure whether Dawson had killed his adoptive parents, that there hadn't been enough evidence for a conviction, he'd alluded to having some insider knowledge to suggest Dawson was as guilty as the infamous O.J. had been. "Trust me, you don't know everything," he'd said. He knew.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?